Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Tuesday's 10 minutes at the 10th hour of the Pacific time here in Portland, Oregon. I would like to thank all of you for tuning in right now. As I turn on my live feed, you can ask me any questions on LinkedIn. Okay, I'm just going to focus on my LinkedIn audience right now.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so if I could just mute that, that'll be awesome. Okay, as we go in, I would like to pull up my questions. Give me a second. And to start with, there is a question on the Frozen Dough page. That is weird that this question comes up from the Frozen Dough page. Anyway, do you have any information for freezing teff flour? It is gluten-free. Okay, so the same rules applies for freezing anything, right? Because it's flour. It's probably got less than 14% moisture. So that's not too much moisture in there. I say if you are a bakery that uses different kinds of flours, and you just don't use teff flour in all your formulations, and you have some flour left over, best is to make sure you double wrap it in some kind of poly wrapper, HDPE, whatever it is, poly, any kind of poly materials. And you should be able to keep it in the freezer 6 months to a year, So the only problem with teff flour, if I think it's how you get it, is it's a whole grain stone ground kind of method. Basically, you grind the entire grain, so the germ is in there. The only thing that is really of concern is the amount of oil and rancidity and oxidative rancidity that happens in there over time. So if you remove oxygen, if you vacuum pack it, if you keep it in a dark cardboard box, away from light, any kind of temperature fluctuation, keep it frozen, you should be able to keep it for a long, long time. Okay? All right, next question up. Oven humidity. So, would there be any application where there is a closed damper needed? Is it simply a vestigial piece of history? No, it's not. Do you use a partially open damper depending on the humidity level needed per application? Yes, absolutely. So this is where thermal loggers come into handy. Okay, many of the thermal loggers on the market right now, be it Scorpion 2 from Redding Thermal, or the mole or the mini mole from ECD, has the ability to capture your humidity levels during the baking cycles in your ovens. Okay. Yes, you absolutely need to adjust your damper, and this is why. Because certain products require more exhaustion of the moisture than others, right? So I would be thinking, like, for example, bread. Bread requires the dampers to be closed a little bit more, especially if you are baking the artisan kinds of breads. For the low pan breads, the damper needs to be closed also, especially if you work in zones. The front zones needs to be closed to keep the gloss on the bread, right? If you release all the moisture all at once, what you're going to see is a very sandy, porous surface on the bread. Okay, and that's how that's a trick a lot of experienced bakers know to do, is to close the dampers in the front zones or in the front cycles of the baking. All right, to get a nice gloss going. But if you're gonna bake things like cookies, like muffins, where the gloss is not required, you just open up the dampers, right? Just let out the moisture. The more moisture you let out, the faster it cooks, because water is a great insulation. Okay, when there's so much humidity in the oven, it just takes a longer time for heat to transfer and for it to cook. Okay, so it's better for you, depending on the kind of product, to use a thermal humidity logging device, to really control the moisture via the dampers. Okay, maybe that's a little too much for you to handle, but I was just giving to you anyway. All right, and next question would be, how can we check which brand of CalPro is best and which is not? Is there any chemical tests? Okay, so what I'm getting from this question is you are doubtful of the potency of your CalPro ingredient, right? So that's why you want to test it. Okay, so let me tell you what. CalPro process, the production of CalPro's process is really straightforward. So there shouldn't be any kind of what do you call, how would I put this in a good way? Your ingredient manufacturer isn't trying to sell you a cheaper version or a less functioning version of CalPro so that you can use more. Okay, it's quite unlikely the case. What is happening is probably you're wondering why your CalPro isn't working. Okay, if your CalPro is not working, it means that your concentration of mold spores on your product is higher than what the CalPro can handle. Okay, so these are some of the things that you need to look at. What's the pH of your dough? If your pH of your dough is wrong, then the CalPro is not going to work. All right, go to that page, CalPro page. It will tell you what's the pH to work with. Okay, sanitation, and I insist that you look at sanitation as one of your number one things. Instead of adding in more CalPro, I'm always a process equipment solution believer before I am an ingredient solution provider. Okay, look at your entire process. Make sure your surfaces are sanitized, your air filters are sanitized, your people wear gloves. Do not even touch the food without gloves on. Okay, and when you've done all those things, pH, sanitation, and you still are doubtful about your calcium propionate, it's time to hire Richard, which we will have on in 2 weeks to help you look at your process and understand, what part of your process is going wrong, and what if you need a different kind of CalPro, or if you need a different brand of CalPro, right? So we do cover these issues in our next week's seminar on shelf life. It's going to be part 1 and part 2, 2 different weeks, because we've got so much material. Part 1, we're going to focus on bread, and part 2, we're going to focus on cakes and muffins. Okay, so 2 different systems. You need 2 different kinds of approaches for shelf life extension. So do join us. Sign up today. The URL is below for you to join. And come and learn more about a holistic approach to shelf life extension rather than just an ingredient, just adding Kelpro. That's not gonna help you in the long run. Okay. All right. Ascorbic acid. Hi, I watched a video explaining ascorbic acid as an oxidizing agent. I've also seen it used as an antioxidant, which is a reducing agent, ? These seems to contradict each other, and am I correct in understanding the terminology used, or is it dependent on the system that you're adding to? Thanks. Well, it's both. As dough, on the dough rheology side, as bakers, we use oxidizing agent as a term for any ingredient that helps buck up the dough, right, to make dough stronger. And for the term reducing agents, we use it as a general catch-all term for anything that breaks down the dough and makes it flow better and more flexible, okay? So I want to refer to what really is ascorbic acid. So ascorbic acid in general science of things is an antioxidant, okay? And with that, you get antioxidant properties with vitamin C, ascorbic acid, and pretty much is an effective oxygen scavenger, okay? But in baking itself, ascorbic acid ascorbic acid pretty much reacts differently, okay? Actually, ascorbic acid doesn't react directly on the protein. It is first oxidized to dehydroascorbic acid, DHAA. And together with ascorbate oxidase, which is the flour's own enzyme, this DHAA oxidizes glutathione to glutathione disulfide. Okay, when this happens, it firms up the dough. There goes my accessories. It firms up the dough, and that's what we talk about as bakers when we talk about oxidizing agents. Okay, so this effect itself makes ascorbic acid key to cleaning up labels and basically provides the same reaction as ADA and potassium bromate. Okay, similar reactions. That's why it's called an oxidizing agent. All right, Nate, thanks for dropping by. Question regarding frozen gelatinized desserts. When freezing a dessert with gelatin, what is the best way to prevent synersis when the product is thawed? So that's a great question. Okay, synersis is a process by which any kind of gel releases the water over time. And syneresis is exacerbated by temperature changes, okay? So my question is, what kind of gelatin do you use? And who is it from, okay? There are certain providers out there who produce gelatin especially for freezing applications. So you have to get the right one, okay? And I believe those kind of gelatin ingredients, and there are some out there, would mix the gelatin up with some form of modified starch or gel or hydrocolloid so that it absorbs the water when the syneresis happens, okay? So there are certain freezer stable gelatin that you can use for this particular application. All right. Ask, because you look like you're from an institution, ask your food service provider. Okay. People like Dawn, people like Parados, um, uh, CSM maybe, and Bro, they would have solutions for you in terms of freezer steady gelatin. Okay, but I would not recommend using straight gelatin because it's just not created for that application. All right. Okay, hope that helps you, Nate. All right, let's see what else. Let me get back to my question queue. Sorry about that. Water activity. Hi, I would like to know how relative humidity of the surrounding air can affect the water activity of my final product. And if so, how can I prevent huge variations in the water activity of my product, given that I have a small production plant and I'm not able to control this humidity? Okay, so how can I put this the best way? Your production plant's humidity is not going to affect the water activity as much as the baking process, okay? The humidity is going to affect the water activity of your product through only storage, okay? So after you bake your product, that's where you have to really worry about water activity over shelf life. Okay, and to prevent that is really easy. Make sure the packaging is right. Make sure you have vacuum packaging. That's the best way to go. To prevent water activity from going above a certain point, you really have to bake it out. And you have to understand your baking process. And for that to happen, you have to really go into thermal profiling, okay? And to really get that water out. I hope that helps. If not, please come to our seminars to ask questions live. Okay. All right, Nate, you say silver leaf gelatin sheets. Yeah, that's not going to work, Nate. I don't think you can use the gelatin sheets to create a freezer product. You have to do something else. Those gelatin sheets are amazing. Okay, there's an amazing technology, but they're just not made up for that application. It has to be a powdered form. It has to be a mixture of hydrocolloids, gums, and gelatin. Okay? All right. So before I go, I would like to thank IFC for coming on as a sponsor. As you know, Bakerpedia is free because we work with sponsors like IFC. Right here. IFC Solutions. Yay! Color products. Natural colors, everything you need for coloration. Okay? We work with people like IFC Solutions so that we can create all these content for you for free. And the seminars are free. Okay? Because of awesome sponsors like them. So if you need any kind of color, natural color, go to IFC. You know, tell them that Lynn Carson sent you there. Okay. I will be back tomorrow on Wisdom Wednesday to answer more questions on shelf life and to really share a few more tips on baking bread and increasing its shelf life. Okay. And an extra surprise for those of you who want to look at the new technology for extending shelf life. Okay, more tomorrow. Come back at 10. Have a nice one, bakers.